Good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America on Wednesday, October 22nd, 2014. And this is Live Talk. I'm Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Kip Stube.
And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about preparations for the 2014-2015 agriculture season.
To join the discussion, phone us directly at this number, 001-202-619-2077, and we'll call you back.
And as usual, Live Talk goes out to Zimbabwe on our 919 medium wave frequency and on the 4930, 5940 and 15455 kilohertz shortwave, Monday through Friday at 8:30 p.m.
On the internet, you can find us at www.voazimbabwe.com, www.voashona.com, and www.voindebele.com.
We are so surprised and we are so perplexed to hear that the price of maize seed has gone up by about 30% on the eve of planting. The season is upon us. Our season starts 1 October. We are in the season. We had already made our budget based on the price of maize seed that we had.
Ngikhuluma nawe nginje kule project engisebenza Eastern Cape. So kulinyiwe kalokuhlanyela kuyona liviki. Kodwa bengibela kithi amaviki amabili ayedluleyo. Angiboni indawo lapho umbosokuthiwa sokuphendulwe ngoba ukuthi abantu baphume bayethenga inhlanyela, abantu bayethenga fertilizer ngentengo ezikhona kathesi kungani kulukhuni. So sesabela ukuthi even izulu lingaba khona mhlambe ungagcina kuba lo hlupho lwendlala.
Vana vachiziva kuti mundima dzavo vanoshanda nevarimika vangadai vasati vamboenda kunoparidzira mitengo yavo vakatanga vambotiudzawo takagara pasi pese kana taizowirirana nokuti isiso kana paine chikonzero zvine musoro tiri vanhu vanonzwisisawo nokuti tiri mubhizinesi zvakare kuti kuva murimi kuva munhu webhizinesi.
Oh, once again, thanks for joining us. You are listening to Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about preparations for the 2014-2015 agriculture season.
As farmers throughout Zimbabwe have started preparations for the new agricultural season, seed houses have hiked the prices of maize seed. The Arnold newspaper reports that a 10 kg bag of seed which cost between $21 and $24 last year, is now selling for between $27.50 and $31.
The government is also saying that it has imported an estimated 90,000 metric tons of fertilizer to augment local supplies for the agriculture season that is starting shortly.
What do you think about this issue? If you wish to join the show right now, phone us directly at this number, 001-202-619-2077, and we'll call you back. That number again, 001-202-619-2077. You can also send us a message on WhatsApp, and our number is 1-202-465-0318. Ye kungakunjalo ke mfowethu.
Wonguka Gibbs nasi tinoti tinge tichitarisa tichienda kumaruwa tichitarisa nenyaya dzekugadzirira kurima. Tinenge chida kukurudzira kuti varimi kunyanya vange vachifona tichitaura navo nezvegadziriro yavari kuita matambudziko avari kusangana nawo kana kuti zvimwe zvavari kuona zviri kuva rerukira nyaya yekurima inyaya yakakosha zvikuru muZimbabwe nekuti vanhu vakarima vakakohwa pakuru zvinoita kuti upenyu hwavo hunge huri pari nani. Gore rakapera takaona varimi vakawanda vachitanga kurima fodya uye uwandu hwefodya yakarimwa hwakakwira zvakanyanya. Nyaya yechibage chakarimwawo chakati wandei gore rapera kudarika mamwe makore. Zvinova zvinhu zvakakosha nekuti nyika haizotenga chibage kubva kunze sezvayanga yakuita kutenga kuZambia, kuMalawi, kuSouth Africa. Chibage chinenge chamo munyika nekudaro mitengo inogona kuti itidzikirei. Saka ndo nyaya toda kuti tinge tichitarisa iyo Gibbs.
Kunjalo ke Zulu kandaba lingalithola njani lapho likhona khona ngapho ke ngemakhaya. Thina ngapha lo Blessing Zulu siyaphila sibili omagama. Udaba esiqoqa ngalo lamhlanje sikhuluma ngokulima. Kambe seliqalisile yini ukubiya phela insimu zenu? Nxa seliqalisile okunye lenzani? Seliqalisile yini lokuthela umquba kube sokubuya lokunye okuthiwa imvundiso yefertilizer kumbe kuvele akukho khonokho ezitolo zeZimbabwe. Siyakhumbula ukuthi sike saxoxa lani ngeviki ephelileyo sibili Blessing. Soke labalimi eVictoria Falls saxoxa labanye eMtare emaswingo eGwanda kanye leChirumanzu. Abathe okuhluphayo ukuthi khonokho kuthiwa ifertilizer ngwana kukho kumele kusetshenziswe njalo nxa sebekhangela okunye futhi ongana kukho ezitolo ukuthi inhlanyelo yankhona iyabi ingani khona kodwa kwezinsuku iyaphela abakwazi ukuthi yangaphi. So ungazani kuyahlupha khonokho. Sibona nje lokuthi ke khathesi sokukhuphulwe intengo yenhlanyelo. So ingavele ikhuphuke njalo abantu balima bethini kuyahlupha mfowethu.
Gibbs, I think we have our first guest, that is Mr. Wanda Chabikwa, of the president of the Zimbabwe Commercial Farmers Union. Mr. Chabikwa, good evening. Mr. Chabikwa? Mr. Chabikwa? We are having a bad connection there. We'll try to call him again. But I think we also have our second guest, that is Mr. Gadzirai Chirumanzu. Mr. Chirumanzu, good evening.
Hi, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Of course, Mr. Chirumanzu is a farmer in the Midlands province, that is the Chirumanzu area. And Gibbs, maybe you can start the ball rolling.
Yes, Mr. Chirumanzu, can you tell us about the situation where you are and maybe throughout the country? Are people accessing maize seed? Have they started preparing the fields and all that?
Yeah, well, like any situation, of course, people are raring to go. They are eager to prepare their fields. But like any situation, the hurdles are there. That is the procurement of the seed itself. It's very, very expensive. And the fuel, that is those in the commercial farming, business sector. So to put up all that stuff, take into consideration the sanctions we have, of course, it's a mammoth task. But, well, like in any situation, people are raring to go.
Now, Mr. Chirumanzu, we saw during the colonial era, for example, that not all white commercial farmers who got loans were successful. Some of them actually failed. And there is this new revolution, of course. We have new black farmers on the field. Tell us about the access to loans from banks. Is it easy or it's still problematic?
No, the access of loans is still a big issue. This is why you find that the government, for all along has been trying to convince the banks to accept the 99-year lease so that the black farmers or the new farmers could have access to loans. Because for all along, these banks have been, asking for collateral security. And we need to know that in Zimbabwe, most of the population, who moved or that moved to farms were from the rural setup, people who did not have any form of collateral security. Because with the banks, they are looking at, fixed, assets or immovable assets. Whereas most of the people who moved into these commercial areas, majority of them, of course, they have their mombes, the courts, the donkeys, and so forth, which banks do not accept. So it is really a challenge. But now we also need to understand that these banks, of course, majority of them are not Zimbabwean owned. So there is an agenda to start the whole agrarian reform program. So it is really an issue. But however, like in any situation, of course, the government is trying its level best. Because you remember that the president has got his, seed program where he goes about, dishing out seeds to the community and so forth.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chirumanzu. Do stay on the line. Mr. Chirumanzu, of course, is not happy. He's saying some of the banks are not helping the black farmers. We'll talk about that. I think Mr. Chabikwa is back. Mr. Wanda Chabikwa, of course, is the president of the Zimbabwe Commercial Farmers Union. Let's try again. Mr. Chabikwa, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
We are doing great. Thank you so much. And Mr. Chabikwa, of course, on the other line, we've got a farmer, Mr. Gadzirai Chirumanzu. He farms in the Midlands. Gibbs, Mr. Chabikwa is on the line.
Yes, Mr. Chabikwa, we're talking to Mr. Chirumanzu, who said that most farmers are not going to access loans. So tell us about the magnitude of that problem. What is going on?
Yeah, that's very true. Bank loans, I think that's what we are referring to. If we're talking about bank loans, our banks require collateral, and the collateral is generally in the form of a fixed property with title deeds, which means the banks are expecting the farmer to have a building, a fixed property in an urban area, which has got title deeds. Now, that's not the only problem. The other problem with bank loans is at what interest rates. The borrowing rates are too high. Even if the loans are going to be available, farmers will not make it because agriculture is a primary industry. Generally, it requires interest rates, borrowing rates that are single digits. From 2.5% to 7.5%, this is what we know. Acceptable. If it's going to be very high, it's going to be up to 10%. Now, the current environment, our loans are too high. We're talking about 18 to 25%. And that becomes, if the farmer is going to farm well, we are looking at the farmer's margin to be around 20%. So if the bank takes all or more than 20%, then the loans will not help us much there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chabikwa. Do stay on the line. Kune ava vachangotibata nhasi tinoda kuti tinge tichitaura zvikuru nemi varimi nezvegadziriro yenyu yemwaka wataakupinda wekurima wa 2014 na 2015. Iro gore rinouya tichitarisa matambudziko amungadai muinawo, tichitarisawo zvamuri kugona. Hatingangotarise matambudziko chete, pane zvimwe zvakawanda zviri kuitwawo nemi varimi. Tine muteereri wekutanga, Mukoma Stanley, makadi. Mukoma Stanley?
Yes, please.
Tiri kutaura nenyaya yegadziriro yekurima. Matangawo here kugadzirira?
Ichokwadi tatanga kugadzirira, asi Mukoma Blessing zvakaoma. Zvakaoma. Mari muno muZimbabwe hamuna. Izvezvi tiri kutaurira kuti right, inini okay, handisi paground, handisi kurima hangu, asi vabereki vangu vanorima. Ndine hama dzakati dzinorima dzandinoda chaizvo kuti ndibatsire mukurima imomo, ndinovatengera mbeu, ndine bread winner. Asi chokwadi kutaura chokwadi, ava handichakwanisa mapuraisi ari kutaurwa, zvakaoma. Hurumende yaMugabe iyi iri kutsvaga unga nemupoto chaimo chaimo, handi munoona. Nekuda kwokuti vari kunyatsoziva kuti nezvedu vari kutsvage mbeu, zvinoita kuti vane chikafu chamangwana, asi uzopa vari kuti vari kutsvaga mari ipapo, handi munoona. Saka izvozvoga izvozvo zvinooma. Inini pachangu inini I cannot afford to feed myself, handi mazvona. Saka aiwa ndakurotiwa hameni. Isi tinoziva kuti hurumende yakagara iri hurumende inokuda kutiomesera pakurarama kwedu. Haisi mhosva yavo mafeed houses, because vanodziita zvakati kuti tiwane mari. Haisi mhosva yavo, mhosva yehurumende iripo. Saka aiwa hapana zvatingaita.
Mungati hurumende here, handiti mafeed house aya anenge akazvimirira here, nai Mukoma Stanley?
Munotaura kudaro kuti vanenge vakazvimirira, but vane directives dzinobva kuhurumende inoti tinoda mataxi noda mari yakati kubva kwamuri. Handi munoona. This is why they hike their prices. Hakusi kuti vanenge vachida. Handi munoona. Because taiva mari vekuti vanhu vanokushenwa nehurumende iripo, kuti vanopiwa vanokushenwa mapuraizes avo, vanogonawo kunyevenutsa, asi vanenge vachingoti tiri kuda mari. Munoona zvinezvi tine economy muno muchano yakanzi airtime chaicho, tinoda kuti panodziswa dhora iroro tinodawo mari yakati. Saka vanoitawo sei? Vanongoitawo sei izvozvo? Because iyi directive iri kubva kuvakuru. Handi munoona. Saka tinochema nehurumende ndo vane problem isiyo, because vangadai vari kukushena vanhu ava kuti tiwanewo kurarama isisu. Handi munoona.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru Mukoma Stanley nekupinda muchirongwa chedu. Of course, Stanley is saying that because the taxes are too high, seed houses are now passing them on to the farmers, and then this presents serious problems. Gibbs.
Siyabezwa kakhulu ke abantu Zulu kandaba besithi kukhanya ngazani ke abantu babona ukuthi umthelo we-tax uphezulu, so khona laba abathengisayo sebekhuphula ke umthengo we-maize, kumbe sithi ke inhlanyelo. Nxa sokunjalo ke kukhanya ngazani abaningi benu enxa lingaba lobuzima wokuthi lithenge ke inhlanyelo. Sicela lisifonele khona manje ukuthi sixoxe phela. Nasi number 001 202 6192077 lifona kathesi akuthi sizwa bani
vachabikwa ngati mbotarisei nezvesangano reZimbabwe Commercial Farmers Union munenge muchishanda sei nevarimi uye nehurumende?
Varimi, bato redu revarimi basa raro kumirira zvido zvevarimi. Kuhurumende tinoshanda nehurumende nokuti kuhurumende ndokunogadzirwa mutemo. Tinoshandazve nevamwe vatinoshanda navo vakafanana nevembewa, vefertilizer, vemishonga inoshandisa kurima, vemagetsi, vanotengesa meshini atoshandisa matrakita, maimplements, irrigation. Vanhu vavo tichishanda navo tichigara navo pasi tichimbokurukurawo tichiedza kuti zvinhu zvavainazvo izvi vanazvo kuitira kuti zvishandiswe nevarimi. Tichiedza kutarisa kuti vangapfavise papi kuti tese ivo zvavo zvifambe, vatengese zvinhu zvavo zvavainazvo, isisuwo tizvitenge, tishandise, tibudirire mukurima kwedu. Saka tinoshanda nehurumende chete. Aiwa, hurumende toidira pamutemo. Zvakafanana neizvozvizvi tine nyaya yandanzwa ichitaurwa apa yembeu. Haisi hurumende yakakwidza mbeu. Vanoita zvembeu ava sangano ravo ndo rakafunga kukwidza mutengo wembeu. Sevanhu vari mubhizinesiwo ndozvavakaona zvakakodzera, asi isiso sesangano ravarimi tiri kuti aikashi ko makwidza mutengo chiko chamaona makwidzira chii, ko madiwo mataurawo nesu vamwe venyu vacho vanozvitenga mbeu iyoyo kuti vediwe takukwidza kusvika pa nokuti pane zvazoitika zvakadai. Nyaya iyoyo inofanira kunge iri pakati pedu varimi nevanhu vanotitengesera. Kuhurumende tinozoenda kana tatadza kuti tapokana taona kuti pakuda kupindirwa apa narefuri. Ndo mashandiro atinoita iwayo.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru vachabikwa kune avo vachangotibata nhasi. Tiri kutaura nezvegadziriro yemwaka wekurima wa2014-2015. Kurima muZimbabwe Gibbs kwakakosha zvikuru zvekuti kana pasina charimwa zvinhu hazvimire zvakanaka. Nekudaro tinenge tichida kunzwawo kuti varimi zvinhu zviri kuvafambira sei.
Yes, khuluma nje ke Blessing, ilizwe leZimbabwe lifuna i1.8 million tons of maize ngomnyaka, kodwa siyabona ukuthi kunjalo kuhlupha. So ngizokuthiwa ke sesilo munye umuntu esila kumbala.
That's Mr. Mandla Nkomo, an agriculturalist. Mr. Nkomo, good evening.
Good evening, Blessing. How are you?
I'm doing good, and thanks for joining us this evening. And of course, Mr. Nkomo, we are talking about preparations for the 2014-2015 season. And on top of the agenda, of course, is the issue of financing this agricultural season. The problem is that it appears that farmers are still having problems accessing loans from banks. And if they do access the loans, they are very expensive. Mr. Chabikwa here from the Zimbabwe Commercial Farmers Union is saying they can be as high as 18 to 25%. That is the interest. What is your take on this?
Well, I think, unless if you are growing gold or something, there's no way a farmer can be expected to afford, that level of interest. And I think, if we if we are serious about getting our agriculture back on track, we need a complete overhaul of agricultural finance. And I think, that overhaul requires that we come up with products that are fit for purpose, that will respond to the realities of a particular sector. To charge a farmer 24% to grow a product that is a margin of maybe 5 to 10% is totally senseless. And I think, we really need to get a solution now.
Maso sikhangela ke baba Nkomo ngenhlanyelo lokunywa ke okutshiyeneyo. Siyabona ukuthi eZimbabwe kukhanya ngazani kuyadula sibili ukuthi umuntu athole inhlanyelo engazani angayisebenzisa. Kambe ukuthi kwenziwa kuyini khona?
Gibbs, into ekhona mfowethu ukuthi intengo yezinto ibunjwa zindleko ezihambelana lokwenza kwaleyo nto. Asiqale ngenhlanyelo. Inhlanyelo ukuthi izibe khona abantu abaningi abakwazi, kodwa kulabalimi okufanele belime umumbu wenhlanyelo. And ukulima umumbu wenhlanyelo akusomsebenzi olula. Ngakho-ke nxa kusilela abalimi abazasilimela kuleli lizwe, kutsho ukuthi ikhampani njengabo-Seedco labo-Pioneer zizayahlanyelisa umumbu kwezinye indawo kwamanye amazwe, whether kuseZambia, whether kuse-South Africa, whether kuseMalawi. Nxa inhlanyelo leyo isiphekiwe, isibuyiselwa kithi, izaba le ntengo ephezulu ngoba indleko zakhona lazo ziphezulu. Ngakho-ke akumangalisi ukuthi inhlanyelo iyadura, but okwesibili i-fertilizer kumbe umvundiso, i-fertilizer esiyisebenzisa kakhulu kwelakithi eZimbabwe, i-ammonium nitrate, yenziwa i-nitrogen yakhona, i-ammonia lesikhuluma ngayo, kasisayenze eZimbabwe ngoba isebula sakwanisa ukuthi senzele i-ammonia. Ngakho-ke i-ammonia isivela phesheya. Konke lokhu kwengeza intengo yama-inputs yezokulima.
Ngicela ukufaka isibili ngesikhiwa. I think he raised very interesting points. Akufaka ngesikhiwa just 1 minute khonokho kwe-maize seed and others.
The point I was making ngesindebele was this, that the cost of agricultural input is completely driven by how the components that we are talking about are derived. So if we look at seed maize, for example, it's a very complicated and technical process to produce seed maize. You require specific farmers and certain conditions. So in the event that we do not have sufficient seed maize producers in the country, seed houses are having to outgrow the seed maize production externally. When you now bring that seed into the country, it's obviously going to be more expensive than if we had sufficient production locally. But it's not just the seed, it also is the fertilizer. Now, the biggest component in ammonium nitrate is this thing called ammonia. And ammonia or urea has to be brought in from outside the country because SABLE is no longer able to produce that. And that adds a huge burden onto the cost of producing a staple product like maize in the country. So the answer gives is that we need a complete overhaul of how the inputs that go into agriculture are financed, are managed, and are produced. That's how we can start to get a bit of control on the cost of production.
Thank you very much.
Now, Mr. Chirumanzu, are you still on the line?
Yes, I'm still there.
Yes, it is Malcolm X who said if you don't learn from history, you risk repeating it with all its imperfections. We see that in 1912, the Rhodesian government established what was called the Land Bank, that is the government to give farmers cheap loans. Can the government not do the same? What has happened to AgriBank?
No, well, remember before this bank called AgriBank, it was the Finance Corporation which was earmarked to finance the farmers. But like I said, this bank, irrespective that it would want to venture into farming business with the other stakeholders, that is locally or international, or let's put it this way, regional, you find that it cannot because of these sanctions imposed. So even if outsiders, could see that Zimbabwe has got the opportunity to do a BCD in terms of farming. You find that there are finances cannot be used in Zimbabwe because of these sanctions. So it is a hell lot of a problem. And it's a question of, dog eat dog, the situation we are currently facing. And maybe in addition to this, seed component, again, you find that the companies or the shareholders to these seed companies, most of them, or the majority who have the shares in these seed companies, are foreigners. So, being foreigners, being white again. So, at the end of the day, it's just a political, situation, but being played, in a business sector, in this case, agriculture. So, the question or the point which is being driven home is that remain to warn.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chirumanzu. Quickly, we want to read what people are saying on WhatsApp. They are sending us texts, of course. Matthew says, Zimbabwe's agricultural output has been affected for a long time. It needs more subsidies. And then Mare says, in Masvingo, a 10 kg of maize is costing about $27. Then Charles says, the prices of all inputs are far beyond the reach of many, taking into consideration the market price that has affected almost every farmer. The price of maize for a 20 kg bag, for example, is such that rural farmers will struggle to raise such an amount. The government has to subsidize to help disgruntled farmers. It looks like contract farming is absorbing a high number of farmers, revealing that the input pricing is high. Patricia says the challenge is that people do not have enough money to buy seeds and they have to reduce the price. Mbaiwa says most people in rural areas are facing great challenges as they cannot cope up with the increasing prices. Simon says, why increase maize seed prices as if there's a shortage of the commodity? It does not make sense when people did harvest maize last year and they appear to be a surplus. So why are the seeds, the seed price, why is it still going up? Tando says very great challenges. Yields will fall because of the prices of the maize seed and fertilizers. Shumba says the seed price is a challenge. We want a sorghum seed in Chikombedzi, but it's just too expensive. Timothy says, what a bitter pill to swallow and a hard nut to crack. If I think of farming this season, Ino says we can't afford the seed price since we are unemployed. The people have spoken.
They've spoken, and I think Mr. Mandla Nkomo wants to call for his teleconference call, and so I'll pose one last question to him before he calls. Now, Mr. Nkomo, akutshela abalimi ukuthi kumele benzeni ke nxa ungabacebisa nje ngamafutshane 7.
Ya ngingakacebisa abalimi Gibbs ngifuna ukukhuluma indaba ye-agribank ukuthi eqinisweni indlela ye-agribank esiyiyo yona kathesi akuseyiyona ibhanga yabalimi isiyi-commercial bank ngoba ibhenki yokulima kufanele ukuthi ithole imali ngendlela ehlukene kulalabo abantu ababolekisa imali ngama-24%. Ngakho-ke enye into kumele siyenze uvuseleli i-agriculture kwelakithi ukuthi kufanele sakhe ibhanga eqondane labalimi ekwazi ukuthi abalimi babolekiswa njani imali. Kodwa sengiqondane laba abalimi ngithi kubalimi akulahli imbeleko ngokufelwa ye into zinzima kodwa abalimi kufanele beqoqane bebumbane bebe esingathi ngama-commodity association njengaba abafowethu beze-CFU bekwenza ngoba yiyona indlela ezasisiza ukuthi sibe le buying power ezasivumela ukuthi nxa sithenga inhlanyelo kumbe i-fertilizer intengo ingani yehla
isikhathi manje duko
uyathenga u-25 kg wakhe kumbe u-50 kg we-fertilizer eyedwa uthenga ngentengo ephezulu ku-value chain yakhona yonke
akusizi. Cela uphenduke for 2 minutes uphenduke futhi uqedise 2 minutes kuphela bese uchaye icall yakho.
Mr. Chirumanzu, Mr. Chabikwa, please do stay on the line. We'll be back after a short break. Mkoma Arnold Rambayo Muripa Parunari. For our radio listeners, we are streaming live. Go to www.voazimbabwe.com and press on Live Talk. This is Blessing Zulu.
Baba Nkomo ubambe khona apho mbijana uGibbs Tubelo okhulumayo.
For those of you who are just joining us, this is Studio 7 Live Talk, and tonight on Live Talk we are talking about preparations for the 2014-2015 agriculture season. Of course, agriculture is important for Zimbabwe's economic recovery, and as they say, if agriculture catches a cold, the whole economy will sneeze. Gibbs.
If you wish to join the show right now, phone us directly at this number 001-202-619-2077 and we'll call you back. Yeah, uthi siqhubeke isiqede lo Baba Nkomo abe sesihambela ke. Baba Nkomo usakhona?
Ngisakhona du.
Uthi siqedise khonapho nje qhubeka nje ngamafitshane bese sizakuvalelisa.
Into bengiyitsho Gibbs ukuthi nxa sithi siyakhangelisisa izilimo esizilimayo kwelakithi umumbu, amabele, amazambane lakho konke lokho. Izinto abantu bakithi abazaziyo ukuzilima. Kodwa kathesi ngendaba yokuthi ama systems kumbe ngathi inhlelo zokuqoqa inhlanyelo le fertilizer lan asasebenzi ngemfanelo. Sokusenza ukuthi kube nzima ke kubalimi, kodwa ake sicabangeni sizibuze ukuthi kambe xa singathatha iMashonaland yonke ngendlela elima ngayo umumbu, mabalimi bengaqoqana lama seed companies ukuthi kube yibona abalima i-seed maize, kuzasisiza ukuthi nxa sesifuna inhlanyelo lathi siyithole ngentengo engcono. Nxa sikhangelisisa i-fertilizer, nxa abantu bengaqoqana ukuthi i-fertilizer leyo uGibbs angayisukele yedwa, kodwa sisukele sibanengi, i-buying power yethu kumbe amandla okuthenga esizabalayo azasinceda ukuthi intengo yama-inputs yehle. Ngakho-ke asizifundise njengabalimi ukuthi uhulumende akusumlimi, abalimi yithi. Fanele sithathe inhlelo zokulima ngezandla zethu, kube yithini esihamba phambili, uhulumende abe sezosilekelela, hayi ukuthi silinde uhulumende ngoba uhulumende kalini kulima thina.
Akuba advise ngesilungu. Qede khona.
Okay, I think Gibbs, all I was saying was that the challenge we face right now is that a lot of the systems we're used to are not working anymore. So when we look at the input side of agriculture, the seed and the fertilizer, I think organized agriculture entities like the ZCFU need to step up to the plate and say, how do we become part of, say, seed maize production? We need to be part of that conversation. We can't just be receivers of seed maize when we can grow maize. So we must be the ones that are contracted to grow seed maize in those areas where we can grow seed maize. Also, if you look at the collective buying power of, say, maize farmers in Mashonaland and Manikaland, the collective buying power of fertilizer of those guys can actually run a small fertilizer plant. But it requires farmers to be organized, to take responsibility for their farming enterprises, because government is not a farmer. Ultimately, government should be a facilitator. If we put government forward and we follow, we're going to have a problem. Farmers need to step up to the plate and take Zimbabwean agriculture to the next level. We have to take that responsibility as farmers.
Interesting, and thought-provoking. Mr. Chabikwa, are you still on the line? Mr. Chabikwa?
Hello?
Yes, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Now, Mr. Chabikwa, Mr. Nkomo here is challenging you to say you as farmers, as organizations that represent farmers, must actually come together and even produce maize seed on your own, or at least buy shares to make sure that you at least control something, because collectively you can move mountains. Do you agree with that?
I agree with Mr. Nkomo. I agree with his observations. We are not supposed to be price takers as is happening at the moment. We're supposed to be consulted. We're supposed to be stakeholders. Because we are the producers of the seed maize itself. We are the consumers of all the agricultural inputs. Talk about your fertilizers, your agrochemicals, your farm machinery. Surely he is very right. We have to take our place, and we are aware of what place we should take. We are not supposed to be receivers of prices. We're supposed to be part of the system of coming out with producer input prices as well as producer prices.
Thank you. Mr. Chirumanzu, your response to that challenge by Mr. Nkomo that farmers also need to evolve. It's not enough to just say prices are going up without getting their hands dirty and making sure that they are also stakeholders.
Yeah, well, I also fully concur with the two gentlemen's sentiments, but we also need to understand that majority of farmers are still new in this business. So some of these ideas that are being peddled, of course, they are right, but they need to be taught how to do business in a commercial manner. So that is how to do farming in a commercial manner. I think it is because of that, or because of that weakness, that these, input suppliers are taking advantage of. Because if honestly, we know that, for example, potato seed is mostly grown in Nyanga or in Mare.
Yeah.
But if we had many of these guys in the seed side, that is, if we had majority of blacks in the production of potato seed, definitely the price was going to, to reduce. But this is the major problem we are having. Because some of us or some of these new farmers are not yet skilled in the sense that they can come up with these sophisticated ideas.
And Mr. Chirumanzu, being, of course, having the ears of some in the ruling party, I think this is an issue that we expect you to push, right? It's not just a general discussion we are holding here.
No, yes, it is true, but remember, every party or every organization, it comprises members. And I want to believe, whether one is from MDC or MDC, whatever it is, I think if he is involved or she is involved in agriculture, I think these are brilliant ideas which needs to be taken, up to, from, let's say, the councillor upwards to the relevant ministry.
Thank you so much. Tina mkoma Arnold, Mare, makadi mkoma Arnold.
Tiripo idi makadiyo.
Aiwa, tiripo mkoma Arnold, gadziriro yekurima matanga here.
Unfortunately, ndiri kusenza muMozambique, ndiri kunokabhora basi.
Asi munoziva mkoma Arnold zvaitwa kudhara inini ndakamboverenga history bichana. Ndezvekuti vanenge vari kudiaspora sesu, so vanenge vari kumataundi uko vanenge vachitenga mbeu vopa vari kumusha. Then kana pakohwewa zviya izvi tochizoenda kunotora chibage toya nacho kutaundi. Saka hapana anenge asingarimi, handiti.
Aiwaka. Ini shoko rangu nderekuti ini ndinobva kwaMurewa. Ndichibva kwaMurewa inini kwaMurewa tichienda kwaHarare tinopfuura nepabhora. Ndo area inorimwa maseed maize iyoyo tichienda tichipinda muHarare. Hello?
Ndokunzwa itaura izvi
kuti one of the farmers akatorerwa farmer the first family farmer yavabona hatuzati bona ari kurimo here ari kuproduce here maize seed. Vachirumanzu ngavatipindure.
Vachirumanzu pindurai henyu tinzwe, asi panenge pakambomanzwiro andakaita hanzi anga angori mashoko ekuti atora plus asi anga asiri yeta handisina umbowo wacho. Vachirumanzu makambonzwawo nyaya yacho.
Matuanza vanhu vasataura zvavasingazivi. Chechipiri, hazviri kuti one farmer akatadza kurima seed, zviri kuti nyika yose haicharimisi seed. kana tichidhila neproblem ngatidhile sezvairi. Ndofunga kana akateera kuMozambique ikoko asada kutiunzira manhepo munyika, iye ngaaone kuti problem yatotaura pano yokuti torima sei, toigadzirisa sei, towana seed, toigadzirisa sei. Whatever chero murungu yangatorerwa prazi, iye murungu yangasina kutorera munhu muteme here prazi. Saka asada kudzindira mavanga angazvipurera. At the end of the day, akatorerwa famu iroro, akatorerwa nomunhu anoda kuti arime. Full stop.
Vamare, zvingapindura mubvunzo wenyu here?
Kupindurwa kwacho kungapindurwako, asi ndakutongoona zvangu is too political zvazvona, asi apa toda mbeu kumaminda kwedu.
But iwe nini Vamare nini? Kana mati this is too political, saka musa bringa politics mukati. Kamusingazivi kuti chokwadi here kana kuti inheme here. Munhu wamotaura kuti akatora prazi, makambomuona imwe aripo. Timbokubvunza inini.
With the same, ndakangoma newspapers. Kuti bona pakauya masoja akatora prazi, achitaura kuti prazi iyi kumuridzi prazi yaya new owner abona. As within the few days, I my farming equipment, I changed to undisclosed destinations.
Inini munaro here prazi?
Yeah, no prazi. I'm a victim of those farming vehicles. Because I want to be here.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru Vamare navaChirumanzu. VaChirumanzu Vamare zvatingangotaura ndezvekuti zvinotinetsei kana tisina umbo hwakati tsvikiti kuti titi ninga akadai. Ndo zvinoita kuti nyaya yacho iti netsei, asi tinotenda zvikuru nekupinda muchirongwa chedu. Nezvamuri kutaurawo ndiri kuzvinzwa zvekuti aiwa, kana vanhu vachinge vatora mapurazi acho kana angava anogadzira mbeu ngavaite izvozvo zvoshandiswa, zvinobatsira vanhu vakawanda. Tinotenda zvikuru.
Ye baba Nkomo, nxa kuona nyakwa sesikubambelele sibili sicela ngamafitshane nje uphongu utshela ke abalimi ukuthi kambe lapho kuthiwa ngabalimi abatsha abathatha amapulazi ngo-2000 kuyaphela nini khonokuyani kuthiwa ngabalimi abatsha kumele benzeni amafitshane sibili?
Gibbs, into ekhona ukuthi nxa ungumlimi uhlezi phezu komhlaba ulomlandu. Umhlaba ukunika ilungelo, ukunika umlandu lokuthi lo mhlaba ohlezi phezu kwawo fanele ukusebenzele wena, uphinde usebenzele lesizwe sonke. Ngakho ke ngithi kabangahlali phezu kwezandla beloke befuna ukuthi mhlawumbe kumbe kuzavela ingilosi evela kwezinye indaba izobalimela. Wonke umuntu kufanele ukuthi abe lomlando ukuthi if ulomhlaba usebenzise ngemfanelo. Imfundo kayipheli, ulwazi lukhona yonke indawo. Mina ngivumelani lakho ukuthi kuthiwe asingeke sayilima iseed maize. Ukuthi ulima iseed maize kufanele ukuthi umuntu akuqondisa kunika ulwazi. iZimbabwe siproduce ama-agricultural scientists amangaki. Ayizikhwicamfundo kwezolimo, ayizikhwicamfundo kwezemali. Kodwa into ekhona ukuthi abafowethu abanjengabo Chirumanzu fanele basivumele ukuthi sibaxwayise ukwenzela ukuthi isiga lesesikiso ukuthi sihlala siyisizwe sendlala esiphele kithi, ngoba ngibona ngani kulihlazo ukuthi ilizwe lilezulu lomhlaba labantu abalolwazi njengathi sibe siloke sithwala ingcebe yethu siyacela komakhelwane kulihlazo.
Ngicela umtshele khonokho ke umnumzana uChirumanzu, nyakwazi uyasazi isindebele kodwa ubavalelise nje ubatshele khonokho ngesikhiwa ube susihambela baba Nkomo.
Now I think what I'm saying to my colleagues that the debate that
yeah, go ahead Mr. Nkomo.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
No, Mr. Chirumanzu was saying
the point
he heard him.
That's right.
The point I was really making is that look, the little debate we've just had now about who owns what and what not is good, but it's not taking us anywhere. The point of the matter is that if you have got land, whichever way you got it, you've got an obligation. Yes, you have a right, but you also have an obligation to earn a living from that land. And the issue of knowledge and understanding how to do things like seed maize and so forth, that excuse also cannot continue to be used, because this country sent some of us to school to learn how to do those things. We know how to do it. So I think what politicians like my colleague Chirumanzu must do is to create an environment where all Zimbabweans of good conscience can contribute to turning around this country and avoid this thing of where Sesi in Shegisa, or we are the laughing stock of the region, where we have to go around carrying a begging bowl every year to ask for maize from Malawi and Zambia, of all places. It's really, any self-respecting Zimbabwean should be disappointed. That is what's happening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nkomo. And
I'm so politician. What?
Yeah, we know, yes. So, Mr. Chirumanzu, you must excuse Mr. Nkomo is not a politician. He is an agriculturalist. So, Mr. Nkomo, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And Mr. Chabikwa had also indicated that he wanted to travel. And Mr. Chabikwa,
Hello?
you had said you wanted to travel, right? And it was supposed to be only 30 minutes, maybe your last word.
That's
and
correct.
then we continue with Mr. Chirumanzu. Your last word, let's talk about the preparations. What are you seeing on the ground? Are you happy with the preparations so far?
I'm not quite happy with the preparations. What I'm happy about is the enthusiasm that farmers are showing. Farmers are very keen. They want to go and work. The only big challenge is coming in the form of funding. We've been talking about prices of fertilizers. In fact, our prices are too high. Price of seed that has recently gone up. We also are talking about, worried about our machinery. We have never had for a long time now, because machinery drives agriculture, and machinery is not a thing that you cannot buy a tractor to pay like in 1 year or in 2 years. We are working on and lobbying for. We are aware of the challenges that are there facing our nation, but as farmers, machinery is top priority. We have been expecting that we will get long-term loans to revive and modernize our agriculture in terms of machinery. As long as we have not modernized and revived our irrigation infrastructure, our tractors and farm machinery, we'll still be struggling. But I'm happy that the farmers are well focused, they are keen, they are waiting for that assistance, which is normal. Historically, we had what was called in this same country, although under different leadership before independence, we had the land bank. And if we know what is to happen with land bank, you get your machinery, adequate machinery, assessed horsepower requirement for your area, you are loaned, you are given at least 3 seasons, up to 5 to pay. And even your working capital for your inputs and so on, you're looking at 2.5% interest rate.
Exactly.
So we still believe that our government is an enabler. And we are aware when we know that the idea is there. We are talking about utilizing our abundant mineral resources to modernize agriculture.
That's true.
Because agriculture, when it coughs, even the miner will cough underground.
Yeah.
So what comes from the underground is it can come out on the top, and we modernize agriculture. We make sure from the farming to the processing, the manufacturing of agricultural produce, modernized. Then we are back to normal. Then we can, because mining comes and goes. But agriculture is to go on and on because it is the food for mankind.
Mr. Chirumanzu, thank you so much for your time. I know you had to go for 16 more minutes, almost 19, Mr. Chabikwa. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll continue with Mr. Chirumanzu. Regai titore Mukoma Shumba vari parunhare. Makadi, Mr. Shumba, good evening.
Good blessing. How are you, sir?
Aiwa, ini ndiripo. Muri kuona sei nyaya yegadziriro yekurima iyi?
Gadzirai kurima tinayo asi dambudziko rembeu iyoyi ndo ratinayo.
Imi muri kurima here kana kuti muri kuita zvatinoita isu zvongotumira mari yembeu?
Toita zvose.
Muri kuita zvose?
Asi kurima kunyanya.
Saka ndeapi matambudziko amuri kusangana nawo?
Tokanaka nesorghum. Redi iyai. Ndiyo yacho takaisa mafuta iri kuGMB kuya. Mari inonoka kuuya manje.
Inonoka kuuya?
Inonoka kuuya saka kuti wagona kutenga imwe mbeu manje tatawana imwe mari pane dambudziko.
Chikonzero chipi chiri kupiwa kuti mari inge ichinonoka kuuya?
Vosvika kuya mopuwa kuda 2 months ndikati mawana mari yacho. Saka inozouya tadova pakati pemwaka wekurima tozogeta rima chii.
Munenge muchitengesa kupi mbeu iyi? Munenge muchitengesa upi zvamakohwa?
GMB mafunde vachikutikira chikombedzi kuno.
Okay, saka mukatengesa GMB iri kunonoka kupai mari?
Kwai after 2 months.
Oho, aiwa panobva paita dambudziko. Ko saka zvimwe zvamuri kurima chii zvakare?
Mari?
Zvii zvimwe zvamuri kurimawo?
Dada ndiri vafunde papa zvakuti vanonya kurima kuno chikombedzi vanonyanza kuita. Vana Georgia vaya vakazi vatenge netinaende saka ndo vachagona kuti vanotipa mbeu zvino vanoti kwai hatinawo mbeu nekuti hatisi kuzotenga nekuti price yacho hatiikwanisi. Saka pambeu apaito dambudziko todongodzora yemudiwa iya. Yeti low yield manje dambudziko racho.
Muri kutenga mbeu yacho mari?
Tiri kuzikuma $160 ikoko kuti maybe half ton pachisa 50 kg.
Saka varimi vakawanda havana mbeu, paita dambudziko.
Mbeu hakuna hatina asi udorima yemudura nekuti haungamiri 2 months ziya vamwana vati vamberi kare wotoshakura iwe usati wadzvara.
Aiwa, panenge padzwisisika ipapo vaShumba kuchikombedzi uku.
Vachikombedzi asi kunopisa.
Hatitika aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru nekupinda muchirongwa chedu. Tatenda. Of course, Mr. Shumba is in Chikombedzi saying they are growing sorghum and millet, but unfortunately, GMB has not given them their money, and sometimes it delays, say, by about 2 months, and as a result, the farmers will struggle to finance the buying of their inputs.
Mr. Chirumanzu, are you still on the line?
Yes.
This issue of the GMB, I think the GMB has become a burden to the government, right? And the people of Zimbabwe. Do you agree with that kind of notion by some critics?
No, it's not a burden. We need to understand that all parastatals are not at a full throttle. So it's a question of, struggling. So it's not a burden, but I think it was set up for a purpose and for a reason. You find that most of these, farmers in different communities, especially in the rural areas, these are the points where they sell their grains or crops. So it was set up for a purpose and for a reason.
So why is it not paying farmers what is due to them? Is it because of sanctions?
There is a liquidity crunch in the country. I think this is open to everyone.
But every year, honestly...
No, yes, it is true. I mean, remember when we started embarking on this agrarian reform, that was 2000, and the country, had been operating under strenuous sanctions. So it mustn't be something new until and when we overtake all those sanctions. That's when all these industries or parastatals are going to operate normally. But otherwise, it is mdinga.
Yeah, but Mr. Chirumanzu, even under sanctions, Rhodesia prospered because they implemented what they called import substitution industrialization, which I think Mr. Nkomo was also alluding to, that farmers must be better organized and, just not just mourn, but also try to at least change, because if you don't change, you perish, right?
No, it's true. But remember, the economy which you are quoting or referring to for the Rhodesians, that was the economy for whites only, for few people. You were blessing Neni. We are not affected by the white economy. So circumstances they could bust them. This is why nyama yacho vaivuya kuruzeva vachitekera isusu for their own consumption. Whereas at the present moment, you cannot approach an individual and get his mombe for free. So it's different setup, it's different economy at the end of the day. So we need to separate the two. That economy was meant for whites, and we are talking of national economy that has got an impact on every individual. Unlike the Rhodesian era, the economy was for whites. How many people could book in a 5-star hotel? We're only referring to whites.
Thank you, Mr.
So when we discuss about these, farming issues, we need to understand. Take, for example, like fencing at the present moment. All these national fencing companies during Rhodesian era, farmers were given fence for free. But at the present moment, even if you need 2 meters of wire, you need to buy it. There is no credit. There are no loans. So this is tough.
Thank you, Mr. Chirumanzu. Do you stay on the line? We have more messages on WhatsApp. We have Matthew who says, Zimbabwe's agricultural output has been affected for a long time. It needs more subsidies. I think people are still talking about the need for subsidies. Mare in Masvingo says a 10 kg of maize seed is $27 subsidies, but the government is saying it cannot actually give the farmers subsidies anymore because it is also struggling. What do you have on Facebook?
There's Kamsanam Lilo who writes, it never rains but pours for the emerging farmers in Zimbabwe. Input costs without government subsidies will drive many people out of farming. Then we've got Brian who writes, we're happy when we took our farms back, but government is not doing enough to help farmers. We want farmers to be given title deeds in order to receive loans from banks. Then we've got My Whitney who writes, Mawan. Am I right?
Yes.
So then we've got Alexander who writes, government should assist all the farmers in Zimbabwe. Then I've got Sipom Tambo who writes, we've failed to improve on what the white farmers were doing. It's time we enjoy the consequences of our plundering. I think I'll end there.
Maybe as we come to the end of the program, Mr. Chirumanzu, everyone seems to be saying the government has to subsidize us.
Yeah, but this is still a vicious circle. Remember, like I said, the government survives on revenue, that is on taxes, right? And it has to distribute these, taxes to different ministries or to different parastatals. As it is right now, this is why you find that these organizations that represents farmers, blah, blah, and so forth, at the end of the day, the government end up intervening because they would see that, these people, these organizations will be reaping people. As long we don't have enough funds, there is nothing the government can do. But what the government is currently doing is trying. And at the present moment, the most important issue is every individual who is doing business in Zimbabwe, if he or she has got the heart for this country, then we won't be seeing all these, hiking of prices. There was a guy who raised a good question that last year we had a bumper harvest in terms of seed. Now, what is causing that seed price to increase? It does not make any sense. And remember, we are using US dollar. Even if it were to increase, it was supposed to increase, very minimal, something like 2%, 3%. But here we are talking of something more than 30, 40, 50%. And it does not make a sense. So this is clear sabotage of the whole thing or of the whole exercise. And this is why we are saying political, because the Zimbabweans are almost over. And we are sending wrong signals to Europe in terms of our region.
Thank you, Mr. Chirumanzu. Unfortunately, we have to end it here. Time is not on our side. We want to thank our guests this evening. Mr. Gadzirai Chirumanzu is a farmer in Midlands. Mr. Wanda Chabikwa, Zimbabwe Commercial Farmers Union President, and also agriculturalist Mandla Nkomo, and all those who wrote to us on Facebook and also WhatsApp. Signing off, this is yours truly, Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Kips Jube. Good night, Zimbabwe.